All right, it is 6 o'clock. I will call the meeting to order. And we will start off with the pledge and a mindfulness.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it is one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, take a few minutes just to think about why we're here. Okay, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda?
I just have an executive session about a personal matter. Should be quick, but
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I have an addition.
Oh, I thought we made a motion then to discussions, no?
No,
No. Okay.
well, we do it either way.
Go ahead. I'm trying to steamroll you, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I mean, it's the appropriate way. And Chris had already asked for executive session, so I thought we were moving. You gonna make motions for?
I will make the motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second it and discussion.
Here's a motion and a second. All in favor?
No discussion.
Oh, you don't, I thought you didn't want a discussion. Okay.
I'd like to add an area for discussion of the budgets that we have been proposed with here. I didn't know we were going to take action on them immediately this week without any conversation on the general budgets that's been presented and some other outstanding issues that we've asked for before. So I don't know where you want to put that in there.
Just right before it, the plan was always to have a discussion. That's why administrators, and those.
So that would be at what point?
5.
5?
Should we move to remove the budget approval if we can't come to any, depending on what we get for information, or if we're gonna need further information,
Well, we'll leave it as is and we'll come to that after the
make that
discussion.
decision after, okay?
Anything else? All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor? Opposed? Comments for items not on the agenda. This is. I don't see any. Going once, going twice. Student voice. Are there any students here? Okay, easy enough. We are on to current business, and this will be the 24 budget discussion. What I'd like to do is just move around the table. We'll take your top 3-4 questions, and then we'll move it around again a second time. We'll start with Nancy.
All right, well, I'm going through the whole list, and I've probably got about 25 questions.
I would like to give everyone an opportunity to go through it. I mean, you can take your 25 questions, but then it kind of leaves people out of. I
I mean,
don't.
this is all point of the discussion. If you want to start with somebody else, make me last, that's fine.
So that's I think.
Okay.
I honestly don't have any questions. I'm in support of the 5% budget. I'll just lay it right out there.
Okay.
I don't have any questions either. I wasn't prepared to go line by line, so thank you.
I don't have any burning questions. I was looked through the budget. I put it out there. I am for the 6.5 funding into the school. But I don't have any burning questions from what I looked through.
Okay.
In looking at both the 5% and the 6.5, narratives here, I sort of have been sitting with, which one I was the most in support of, and, ultimately, I struggled. I struggled with it because I think the 6.5 is more of what we need, and gets the kids and the teachers more of what they need to educate the kids at a high level. And at the same time, I also want to support both communities in what feels like a responsible budget. And so I think ultimately I settle at the 5% as a compromise that hopefully feels in between or better between the 1.5 and the 6.5 as a middle ground. So I am hoping to get it passed on the next vote. So I am in support of the 5% tonight. Thank you.
I'm gonna let Nancy ask the questions that she has. Right, I mean, lots to say, but I mean,
No,
we're
go ahead.
talking,
Go ahead. Oh, go ahead.
Well-
Maybe you'll take up some of the ones that I have.
probably not.
Okay.
Not,
Well, we'll find out once you get yours out.
well, no, I mean, the narrative of the budget being too low was how the budget got failed.
Are you sure?
No, because the fact is that there's gonna be people that are gonna vote no on the budget no matter what, and the people that didn't want the budget to pass failed the budget. It is what it is. My thought would be bring it back at the 4.97%, which is what you removed that last meeting, and say that's what we're going with, except for I don't want the PR director, but we can have that conversation after, right? We don't have to go line by line. We can just throw a number out there. So I mean, I'll make a motion to 4.97. And it will fail because nobody will second it, and that's fine.
Well, before we get to motions, do you want to pick up Terry on the way around?
Yes.
He's online.
I can do that.
Jerry?
Good evening. Just a point as well in terms of members' ability to speak. So Robert's rules is a member can speak twice for 10 minutes each time. You can't limit their ability to speak, just as an information point. So I do have some questions. I had asked for some detail last board meeting. It was stated that there's been some savings and efficiencies realized and put into this new budget. So I asked for some detail on those. Do we have that detail?
As
Okay,
I
so
understand,
I'm guessing
Was
not. Okay.
no, as I understand it, Terry, these efficiencies were, we came up with when we had to look into the 1.5 budget. So some of those have already been, I believe they've all been articulated what they are, that we're able to get back to the 5 and 6.5% with some of those changes. I think they did in all the information we've shared.
Okay. Well, I don't agree because when you look through this stuff, many of the items that were identified in the 1.5% budget that have been repeatedly over budgeted and underspent have all been put back in. So all the energy savings, it looks like the 75 cents is back up to $1. You put the busing back in, the cameras and all those things are back in. So when you go line by line, a lot of those items that again look historically over budgeted and underspent are put back in, and that's a little concerning again, especially when we continue to have staff members that were pulled out haven't been replaced. So those are concerning, but again, it would be nice to see the details specifically on those savings and efficiencies. Has the line by line detail, the 6.5% budget, been reviewed or provided publicly so people in the community can look at it? I don't believe it has. I think it's only come out to us on a board email. Has that been provided in a packet anywhere so community members can actually look at the line by line?
I can answer that. No, we did send it out to the board. Certainly, we can get it out as well to the community. And if I could just respond to, I also think that when we talked about efficiencies, we were talking about how we were able to take out the debt for the lighting project, as well as we have some savings in the principal's offices. And I believe that was it.
Okay. Well, we don't yet, right? We haven't done any of those things yet, so we haven't done that yet. But again, just and thank you for that answer, Lisa. But again, like energy, when we look at the line by lines, that's been over budgeted, and that got put fully back in, and I would question why. Same thing, with the busing. I think when that 200,000 came out, that I think the discussion was that it was pretty likely that we could find efficiencies in our busing. Certainly could go further than that, but we could with some work find some efficiencies in busing that shouldn't impact services, and that's all back in. So anyway, so I think some details there certainly wouldn't hurt. But another one that I had a question on. So the first time this item showed up was at the last board meeting in the FY24 budget revote details page that listed all the specific items. But the tuition increase for CVCC, if I remember correctly, we had a presentation back in January from Jody Emerson on CVCC's budget and those things. So I find it hard to believe that we didn't have that number prior. So why is that tuition increase number just showing up now? Had the 1.5% budget passed and that shows up later, that would have definitely thrown a monkey wrench into everything. So I'm not certain that I understand how something that we should have known about or had a general sense that there would be an increase doesn't show up until this late in the game in the budget. That's a little concerning, quite frankly. So then let's see. And lastly, last meeting when we were in preparation for discussing this meeting, there were a couple different comments made. One, when there was specific questions, a comment was made that this meeting, the one that we're doing right now, should be a fairly quick meeting because we've all seen and reviewed these budgets over the last several weeks. So it should be a fairly quick meeting. But then when there was questions on specific items in these budgets, it was also stated, well, things have changed. And again, in reflecting on this since our last budget meeting, that's really saying two different things. So again, I get a little concerned when I see, we're saying savings inefficiencies and we can't articulate them. We've got these items that are coming back in. We got tuition showing up, after when it should have, and then we're really saying two different things when we're characterizing this budget. So I guess I'll just finish with, again, I'm mostly concerned that our communities and people showed up for weeks and weeks expressing their concern with all these cuts, specifically personnel cuts. And we have put, you have put forth two budget proposals that neither one brings everything back that you reduced, including staffing. And again, when I see things that have been chronically over budgeted and underspent brought back in before staff is brought back in, that concerns me greatly, especially when that was a very large concern to our community. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Well, I'll take over where Terry kind of left off. I was concerned about the $300,000 for the tuition. What concerned me was, what triggered that concern was the fact that we had a 4.97% that all the cuts were made from, but we couldn't get all those cuts back in. And when we finally got down to the root of that, there was a $300,000 question mark that was left out. I don't know how that could happen. I know that they had approved their budget, the CVCC, the budget was approved on January 9th. And we had one of our board members who was also part of that board as well as a presentation here. So Terry is absolutely correct. What would have happened had the last budget passed and all of a sudden we have a $300,000 hole? That should never occur. My other questions are more related to where we're headed within these staffing positions. You know, they all lead up to why is it that if you came back to a 4.97%, you can't put all those positions back in. This was one of them, but there were several other things that were of concern to me. How many new positions that we have created over the current budget that we're in? I still was waiting to see how many new positions that were created for this budget that we're about to try to approve that have come into this thing. And right now, I have no real clarity on that. I would like to have that before we weigh into that. We also talked about all the gaps and holes within the SPED and the para positions. And Stacy, I don't want to put you on the spot, but is it safe to say that if we go with the 5%, that we would be adding in 3 extra paras? And if we go with the 6.5, we would be adding in 6 extra paras? Is that a correct number?
Can you hear me, folks? Yeah. So these are not additional added on paras. In prior budget proposals, we reduced the funding for 6 paraeducators because, as I think many of you have often said, if you can't fill those positions, why put them in the budget? So in response to that, we did remove the funding for 6 paraeducators. In the 5% increase, 3 of those, the funding for 3 of those comes back. In the 6.5% increase, the funding for 6 of those comes back. They are not adding positions. They are just funding positions that we need, though many of them we don't have filled at the current time.
So existing positions.
But that doesn't jive with the 1.5%, which showed 16 para positions that were still open. And that before that, we were dealing with about 22, 23. And we would move from 3 to 6 on that reduction. So right now, are we talking 22 open para positions at this point? Because we had 16 before in the last budget go round. And I mean, I'm looking at the charts that you provided as
We
well.
do not have 16 open para positions right now.
What do we have?
Well, the table that was in the last packet showed as of March 21st, unfilled special education para and BI positions together, the total was 17 across buildings. That's paras and BIs. I believe yesterday when Nancy and I met, Sue broke that out for us. I think that, though I'm sorry, you're putting me on the spot to make a calculation right now.
Can I refer you to a publication we got tonight? It might help you out, which is
Sure.
part of the agenda. It says unfilled education para and BIs in that order. The second part of that, you have 5 at Berry City, you have 9 at Berry Town, you have 1 at Spalding High School, and you got 1 at the C, which is 16 by itself. And then you have the unfilled educator positions in special ed, which are 50 above. So even if I look at this, we're still talking 22 positions, am I correct?
Oh,
Or at
correct.
least
22 totals, but Paul, you said paras, so I'm sorry. I thought you were referring just to paras. So paras and BIs, correct, a total of 16 at the present day. And special educators, a total of 4 at present. They're not, those are 3 different lines in the budget. They're not the same line, but thank you for clarifying your question.
Well, certainly, and I don't want to belabor this, but because I just need some clarity. We're adding in about $180,000 to $200,000 for 6 paras back into the budget. Are they reflected on this sheet that we got here tonight? Because I don't think they are. At least it didn't correspond with the other budget parts.
We have to remember these are existing positions. These aren't new positions. We also have to remember that the data that we're sharing with you in real time changes sometimes day to day. We've made some new hires of paraeducators recently. We've also had some paras and DIs resign recently. So it's a very fluid number that we just have to understand. It's not going to be like those documents that we share with you. They change in real time. So it can be very hard to.
But the numbers that she has provided don't support BIs and paras at 22. They don't support that. That's what.
I think she just said it's also including special education professional positions too. So,
But Chris, all I'm trying to do is just get a clarification of what is it that we're actually adding back in and what is it that are unfilled? That's the substance of that question, because it is a large number. We've had these positions unfilled for quite some time, and I know there's a lot of fluctuations in that area. And in order to understand what it is we're voting on, it'd be helpful to understand what that number is. But let me digress away from that for a minute. I had a concern dealing with the ESSER funded positions, and I was trying to get some clarity, and I asked this the last meeting. How many ESSER positions are now going into this coming year's budget? It's a straightforward question. Do we have a tally of these new positions that we're adding in to this budget so we have some clarity on it?
that document was shared with folks.
Is that the 1.2 million?
No, that's an old.
Lisa, you know what we're talking about here, that document about.
Yeah, so Paul, in the document, FY24 budget revote options and timeline, on the third page, there's a bolded heading that says ESSER funded positions. And it says option 1 at 5%, there's a Spalding High School behavior specialist absorbed into the general fund. In option 2 at 6.5%, there's the Spalding High School behavior specialists and the curriculum coordinators.
This is on the third page of the narrative for new board members who are looking for that.
So the two ESSER funds that went into the central office for the coordination in the curriculum department, they were put into the main budget, then they were moved back into ESSER. Are they back out of ESSER into the main budget again? We're talking about what was listed at 165,000.
That would be with the 6.5 option. That would be with the 6.5
So they're
option.
coming back in as
We get them out of ESSER, yes. And with the 5%, it would remain in ESSER for another year, those positions.
So do we have anything that's attritional to offset those?
Not yet, not now.
So we're hoping that it's the attrition. Okay, let me move on. One of the things that I learned today is that we were looking at the $64 million ed fund surplus and how that was going to be divvied up. And I think it's important to note that $16 million of that is headed towards Burlington. And that's going to have an impact, I think, on our numbers as we move forward, as James had said. I don't know where the rest of the 75% of that fund is going, but it's something that should concern me and should concern everybody else. Carrie had mentioned the lighting at $91,000, which has been that particular loan paid off. And I would have thought that would have helped bringing in these positions that were cut so we could have 100% of those back in. Even though we had the 300,000, there was still the asbestos at 457 and also the roof fund, which was taken care of by using the capital funds for that purpose, so it wouldn't come out of the main budget. So I would think there would have been a trade-off that would allow us to bring those positions back in. But yet we're being told that even at the 6.5, we can't get 100% back in to where we had the 4.97.
What positions are you talking about?
Everything that is not been brought back up to the 4.97. Everything that was cut from the 4.97, which was put out there on the 1.5 Now, not all of that's come back. And that kind of surprises me that we couldn't do that in light of the fact that we were paying
What
off
positions
positions.
specifically are you talking about though?
There was a whole page of that. We had them last week up on the board.
So, Paul, I think you may be referring to the 8%, our draft one. That was the list of all of the reductions. But the 4.97 did not include all of the positions that we were having to reduce.
When you presented the 4.97 to us, none of those cuts, I'm talking about the cuts after the 4.97 came in, none of those were cut yet. But when we talked about the 1.5, they became cut positions. My question is, from the 1.5 back to the 4.97, should it got us back to that level of the 4.97 without any of those positions being cut that were cut for the 4.97? And I think you said last week that it was because of the tech center and there was another thing that was popped in there, but even so. All right, I'll leave it alone. The last thing I just want to point out to the board is there's a development that is now coming out of the House whereby the legislature is thinking about increasing the budget by 12%. That's about $500 million being added in. It's going to be on the basis of a lot of taxes and other things coming to Vermonters. And I know the governor was very, very concerned about this, and he looked at the long-term position of that. I think this kind of ties into a lot of the other things that we should be more austere about. But the board's going to vote tonight. If the board wants to vote on the 5 or the 6.5, so be it. But I really have a lot of concerns on even the line by lines, and I had about 35 line by lines that could have been reduced because we had over budgeted those lines. Now there's 1,500 lines that I went through, and I've been doing this repeatedly, and it still keeps popping up. And I think Mr. Reel had it right. When you start adding in some of your other calculus in this that deals with the energy and so forth, those were clearly over budgeted. And that to me represents a couple of positions that could come back in. That's my only concern.
Okay. So I did go through all of these lines and I did make the same observation as you and Terry did. But I have a question, Lisa or Mr. Hennessy. On the HSA or specifically the HRA, is something going on with that? Because those numbers seem to be dropping. Or do they normally run? Because the very first one I see, you've got a negative 30,000.
So the HRA, are you looking,
It's line 21 in 6.5.
oh, okay. Yes, so we are over the last 3 or 4 years that we have, you know, the new health plans that we put into place have the HRA, and it's based on utilization. So over the course of the last few years, we have learned that we started out with like an 82% utilization. And as we've, you know, got some history now, we realize that we aren't using those HRAs fully like we had thought we would. So we're now budgeting at about 78% utilization. So I was able to back off some of the HRAs.
Yeah, it seems like quite a bit of them. And as I went through this whole, see that there was,
Yes.
do you know what the total dollar amount was to that?
We go anywhere from 700,000 to 800,000 in HRAs across the board.
Is that expense or savings?
No, that's an expense to the district.
Okay. All right. And I see,
Part of the health benefits. We can't hear you if, I'm not sure what the sound, the audio is off.
okay. Could you just give us an idea of how you are, the HRA is operating?
Sure. So we have a third-party administrator, and that administrator, when the bills come in for, our employees, that money is deducted directly from a bank account. And so that's how we pay those bills. They're directly from our third-party administrator. And part of that is so that, there's a lot of confidentiality involved. And so that's
Yeah.
what they do.
All right. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I just highlighted the ones I had questions on instead of typing everything up. Line 184. General instruction sub-wages, are those being reduced? Or those are part-time? I was trying to figure out, because on your sheet, you're looking for quite a few, and yet it looks like here you're reducing. It's 10,000.
So, what the administrators have found is that hiring more permanent subs is more beneficial and cost effective, actually. So that's the difference there.
You're reducing the sub.
Well, the daily
The
sub
sub-
line,
the sub line.
we're not able to find them, for one.
Yeah.
And we're finding that having a roster of permanent substitutes is more cost effective, and we can actually get the substitutes in that way. This is a trend that's happening in other districts too.
Right. Changes, yeah. Okay, and then the next line was 185. It says, general instruction group health. It's been reduced by 73,000. So what contributed to that? Because it looks like, and you budgeted, let's see, for fiscal year 22, it was 491,000. Those were actuals. And you budgeted 515 for 23. In fiscal year 24, you reduced it by 73,000. And that's group health.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, that's based on actuals. What we do is, and I've talked about our process is we bring all the current employees, their salaries, their benefits into those line items and budget based on the actual information we have. And then obviously we increase that premium by 13%.
So this is not due to staff reductions? This is because it clearly says the health has increased this year for everybody 13%.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it could be the transition in staffing. So we may have had, we may have had 3 people on family plans move or transition to another position or outside of the school, and hired people in who didn't take the insurance or took a single plan. So there's lots of variables with the benefits.
All right. Another HRA. Okay, line 250, math, teacher salaries. Looks like you've dropped it by 107,000. Is there math teachers leaving? I'm not sure.
There was a reduction of 3 teachers in the high school.
So that was 3 math teachers.
I don't believe that's I think
No, not 3 teachers.
that was from other departments. Well,
I don't have the specifics, around that, but it may be 1 teacher and then again, transition from a experienced teacher who retired to a newer, less experienced teacher.
Okay. I think Terry's got a question.
Just a clarifying question, because on the budget revote detail sheet for the 3 full-time teachers for Spalding, it shows 225. And so would that not correspond equally to that 107 number? Thanks.
No, that was 225 would be 75,000 times 3.
Well, I think the question is, of that 225, is that 106 part of that? Correct me if I'm wrong, Terry.
Yes, it is part of it, but it wouldn't correspond exactly to that.
Okay. All right, line 313, athletics coaches' salaries. I thought they were all being, I think maybe this may be one that you were referring to, Paul, of the positions or being added in. So you've reduced it by 89,000. So if I look at this, the fiscal year 22 actuals were 140. Fiscal year 23, you budgeted 229, and now you've reduced it back down by the 89,000, which is 140. So I am kind of just looking at this.
Yeah, at the risk of speaking for the Spalding administration, and I welcome Luke. We were looking at the assistant coach line right at the beginning of the budget process is an area where we could reduce and still meet the service of the kids. So if those were the you're talking about, Paul, that was very early in the budget process.
Because on this one here, which is the reductions of drafts 1 through 4, if I've lined this up right, and it's 313, it's the same one, you got 50,000 on this sheet. And here you've got 89. So that you've reduced it. So you've reduced it more. Okay.
Maybe Luke has some thoughts on this. He's got a hand up in the
So are these actual coaches that you're
assistant coaches?
Assistant coaches.
I can speak to that. We did reduce all assistant coaches. And so that should be right around that $90,000 for all of the assistant coaches. And to the last question regarding the math line, we are moving 1 math teacher position from a math teaching position to a math interventionist under a CFP grant. So it's not being covered in the general budget. That's the math line. I can't speak to the other 2. The other 2 positions, one is an English teacher that is being, they resigned earlier in the year and we're not refilling that position. So that's a reduction. And we have a tech integrationist that is moving into a coach position that will be funded through CFP. So that's another savings. Those are the 3 teaching positions that are reduced, one of which is math.
Thank you, Luke. All right, so, I mean, we don't need the assistant coaches. I mean, I'm assuming that's,
Yeah, the athletic director and the Spalding administration
so
work very
you don't
closely
need
with
to-
folks. Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, Terry. Question?
Well, I was just curious, is there some clarification then on why does the budget revote detail sheet show 50,000 if we've reduced 90,000?
I think because we had originally had more of a reduction in the first iteration of the budget. I think that's why.
Say that again?
When we first with the first budget we had, there was or excuse me, less of a reduction, I believe. And again, Luke might be able to speak to this better than I could, but I know that we were trying to look at. There was a push to have all the assistant coaches a couple of years ago put into fully paid positions, which was a big hit to the budget. And we were able to look at this and come to the determination that we didn't need to have it funded to that high degree. But I can't speak to exactly why it's 50. Maybe perhaps Luke Gordelis can explain that.
Yeah, because it's, because you clearly, so Terry, are you seeing, where are you seeing the 50 on the deal?
So from last board meeting, the FY24 budget revote detail sheet on the second page, Spalding High School, line 65, athletic assistant coaches was a reduction of 50,000, none of which is being brought back. But you're saying, and I apologize, I didn't look at the line that you're looking at, but you're saying that line is reduced 90. So this sheet is understated.
Right, and this one is too. So, but the 6.5 is showing the 89.
Can I ask a question? Because there's two notes on that line for 313, it says decrease based on actuals, and then it says reduce 50,000 in draft 3, January 5th, 2023. Is the decrease based on actuals one note, and then the reduce 50,000 in draft 3 a second note? I'm just trying to understand what that note means. Could it have been reduced partially at one point and then further reduced when draft 3 was proposed? Or was it all just 90,000 across the board?
It was 50.
Lisa?
Yeah, I would say that, yes. So in draft 3, as it says, we would have reduced, it was probably reduced by 30,000, and then we reduced it even more. So yes, I would say that's probably a good assessment of what went on historically, I'd say.
Summary, your synopsis, drafts 1 through 4, you listed all of that, and it's consistently says 50,000. So just clarifying that. Okay. School counselor 344. This is just a curiosity question. It looks like in fiscal year 22, you spent 8,000. You budgeted 30 for fiscal year 23. And for fiscal year, you've reduced it by 15,000. I guess I'm just wondering if it's a needed position. Is it a position or is it a certain?
What school are you talking about?
Let's see. It's 1276, 1276. Which one is that? Or 1401?
1276 is Spalding.
Needed or what?
Yeah. I feel like it might have been some contracted service, and I've this has been sort of over the last 5 years, this line has decreased slightly. But it always, I mean, I really honestly can't tell you what they use this line for. There may be some assessment.
For contracted therapeutic services that we aren't able to get done in-house. There are a number of reasons what this could be used for, and that happens in all of our schools. And there are years use it more often than not, and we're having difficulty getting outside therapists for kids right now in a big way. So that could lead to the reason why that hasn't been spent. It doesn't mean
Yeah,
it needs
and historically, it has not been fully spent. So I think that was a safe line to reduce.
I was thinking, either that or, even reduce it by 20,000, just to bring it down to 10, because it doesn't look like, I don't know, I tried to locate it on your expense report that I requested this week, but these line numbers on here don't match up to this. So I couldn't locate the same.
We're trying to locate therapeutic support for kids. That's
Okay.
that's the hard part.
All right, let's see. Oh, I noticed facilities, your construction, your buildings, your square footage, you've brought that back up to $1, or is it back down to 75? I couldn't figure this out. It says $1 square foot reduced back in draft 2. So did you bring it back to $1?
I believe so.
No, we did not.
Brenda?
Going back to the contracted service line, I believe that goes back to pre-pandemic times when we were putting into the budget the PSAT testing for all students. And then due to COVID and everything, the shift was moved away. And I don't know the current status, but that is the history, I believe, was for that type of assessment.
Thank you, Brenda. Okay, line 510, music teacher salaries. You've reduced that by 20,000. Are we losing a music teacher or something?
We brought in some folks in the music department who were brand new teachers. So I'm sure that is a breakage situation.
Okay. All right. Makes sense. Okay, now we get to the complicated stuff. The 5B, this goes back to the paras and the BIs. So Stacy, this is probably a question for you. Under behavior support 563, line number 563 and 564, you've got listed 5 BIs, add 1. Are those add 1 BI in draft 2? Okay, 5 BIs. And then the next line, it says 5 specialists. So to me, that seems like 10 positions. Are they part of that? Of what we have listed now?
Line 563 is not a special education line.
It is not.
Not every behavior interventionist is under special education.
Okay. And I'm assuming 564 would be the same thing. Okay. Transportation contracts. You've reduced that by 30,000. Is that the one that you reduced it by 200,000?
The original thinking behind reducing the transportation contract with STA to get to 1.5, to be clear, would have significantly altered the services that we provide, probably particularly in Barrytown. I don't know what that line is, but by bringing that 200,000 bucks back in, we're able to hopefully, honor the original plan of the contract and have full services for a kid.
Yeah, you've entered all the writers back in too.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the bus riders and the contract itself, which would allow for the full bus runs and
Okay, so you had 200,000 cut out, but you added that back in all of it, like the 30,000.
Well, I don't know if that 30 is part of the SDA contract. I don't know if it's for, I just don't know what you're looking at.
I'm looking at the same line number. This is the synopsis that Lisa provided us on your draft reductions in 1 through 4. And it's listed 200,000 for the same line number. And here you're reducing it by 30,000.
Are you looking at line 655?
Yes.
The next one is the curriculum. Those are, I think you touched on it. Those are the curriculum, those are the 2 ESSER positions.
Right. Coordinators would be going,
656, okay, at 165,000, and that's 2, or is that 1?
It's 2.
2?
It's a question on that, because in the ESSER fund column, they were listed at $222,000, even though when we listed it on this sheet, it was 165. What's the difference? What happened?
I don't know that.
Okay.
Lisa, around the number I was always aware of was 160.
Right.
Was a
We might be confusing this with, so this, these coordinators were always at 165, but the 3 interventionists we listed at 225. So that might have been what we're talking about.
Those are different.
No, they were both listed individually. They were both the curriculum coordinators, and I think they were like both 112 apiece. They were listed specifically on that.
That could possibly be their salary and benefits, which would make sense.
Okay. All right, communications, line 724. I know you've reduced director of communications, 115,000. So you reduced the whole department in addition to the staff was 115,000, not just the
Yeah,
staff.
everything that went with that position
Okay,
to get to the 1.5.
because fiscal year 22, it was 64,000. You budgeted 72 for 23. For fiscal year 24, you've increased it to 115 of an increase of 43,000, but yet on this here, in the reductions, you had listed 115,000. So that was confusing to me.
Yeah, and I mean, the plan right now is if we go with a 5% budget, we would basically use the communications position, department, whatever you want to call it. We'd use that, do that as a contracted service, which is what we did before Josh came on board in that position. If the 6.5 would allow us to fully integrate that position back into the budget, along with all the commensurate lines that went with it. So if you look at that, the communications line, it's broken down into different categories: supplies, materials, other contracting services that go with it.
Was that department to be phased out because you got rid of the communications committee? And how is that going to operate?
Well, we had not originally planned on getting rid of it. We were really using that as a way to promote our district, communicate with the public, with our colleagues.
I'm not saying there was anything wrong with it. I'm just trying to understand the process of why we went that route.
To reduce it?
Yeah.
Well, when Josh Allen left, we were looking at how we had to look at efficiencies right out of the gate because he left the position mid-year. Okay, how can we make this work? So we saw that as an obvious place to do it. But I want to stress, we view that position and that work as essential. If we need to do it through contracted service work from outside folks coming in, we're going to try to make it work.
So I guess I'm still confused. When you list your reductions, 115, but you only budgeted 72,000 for this year. So you listed what you were hoping to have.
Maybe that 72 is the salary. I don't know. know.
Yeah, the overall, Nancy, the overall cost of the communication department was 115,000. That included everything.
In the stuff in the department.
Well, no, it says 106,000 for total. But you specifically, this was, what you listed here was what you were hoping it would be for 24. But anyways, okay.
Just to clarify, when we put the budget originally together, everything totaled 115. So the reductions were 115 originally, when we included salary, benefits, and all of the other line items.
Okay, that's not what your sheet's saying, but we'll leave it at that. I got one more, let's see. I think that's. I think I am done. Sure. Thank you so much.
Just a clarifying question. That position wasn't always a director. So what is the benefit of that position being a director level position versus being a support position that's perhaps within the IT department? Is there a benefit because it's a director level position?
We were looking at districts our size around the state that had a communications department with an administrative head, and districts our size do have those positions. And I wasn't, as I recall, I don't recall the genesis of the creation of that position. I mean, there might have been some people on the board, but I can tell you that the work that Josh was doing was very highly regarded around the state, and did a lot of work to promote our district and to clear up communication lines for our administrative team. So yeah, it's something that districts our size have at administrative level positions. That's where it came from.
Well, thank you, Chris. But that's not really what I meant. So I agree that Josh definitely does good work, but he would do good work if he was a director or if he was in that position within the IT department. So what is making it a director level position other than a title and a larger salary? And I'm not saying that that's not the right thing to do, but what does it being a director level position give us or help us leverage that it wouldn't if it was just a support role in the IT department?
Josh was a full member of our administrative team, and especially, I mean, it became really apparent, especially during the COVID era, how much help we needed with communications, dealing with the media, dealing with all the website work. The key thing was he was a full member of our leadership team, and it really was never a support position, at least since I've come back. Even when Josh was not at the admin level when he first started, we were really using him in that capacity. So, I mean, that's the best way I can answer that. It's a real essential piece of our work right now, communications, and now more than ever.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I hate to follow. I mean, obviously, I have an issue with this position. Which districts have that position?
I know that Colchester, Burlington. Josh was in a communications director group with folks in his position around the state. So I know that mostly the larger districts.
So how many students does Colchester have?
I know we're the 6th largest district in the state. I don't have that information right in front of me.
That's fine. I'm just,
Colchester's one of the larger districts.
I get communication to parents, giving them information. This is not the place to have that conversation. So I'll just let it go. I hate the position. Just for clarity.
Okay. Any other questions?
Any additional questions beyond what we've asked?
Yes, so this is kind of like the second time around.
Sure.
Last by the
So the thing that I want to talk about is like the narrative of the per pupil. We talked about that we have a low per pupil spending. If we were to raise our per pupil spending to the state average, do you know what our budget would be?
The state average is, I believe, just shy of 21,000 per student. I don't know for sure what that is, but I believe that's what it is. I don't know what that would be.
It would be extremely high. We can barely, I mean, we have surpluses with the budget that we do have. So I just want to be clear to folks that use that number. That number is, you know, it's not like we don't do service to our children. I just want to be very clear about that. Is we have foreign language studies in our elementary school. Is that correct?
Middle schools. We have Spanish available for 5th grade graders.
Right. So does, in neighboring districts, do they all have that?
To varying degrees.
Yeah.
Some more than others.
And there, I know that, like, I think is it Washington Central that has a higher per pupil? Is that?
Significantly higher. Yeah.
Right. And do they have the same services that our schools have? And my guess is they probably don't, right? So when we talk about per pupil, we have to understand that those numbers are not what we think they are. And as we're going to sell this budget, I just want to be clear that that's the case, because that's how we failed the budget, is by telling people that we don't.
Well, may I respond to that quickly? I think an argument that someone could put out there is the reason it would take such a large increase against that state average is because of many, many years of being among the lowest for pupil spending. So we're always in a state of catch up. This isn't new. This goes back many, many years. So when you're always behind, to get to the average, it's going to take that much more to get there.
Jeff?
Per pupil spending gets my blood pressure up. We all consistently talk about how we're the lowest in the state, but the method that you use to get there is what I disagree with. You deduct grant money and then divide your budget by the number of students. That gives an artificially low number, and I don't appreciate it when you do that. You should take your expense budget, total expense budget, divided by the number of students. That's what you spend to educate them.
Just to be clear, we do it the exact same way every other district in the state does.
This is not really about you. This is really about the narrative in our community and what happened with the last budget.
I know it's not about me, Michael.
Okay,
I'm
I just want to
trying
be
to make
clear.
sure we're getting accurate information out there.
Right.
That's what's most important.
Jeff?
Thank you. I will say that it's very disturbing when we try to emulate what other people around us do. I don't care what Stowe does. I don't care what Chittenden County does. I don't care what East Montpelier does. I care about what we do. I care that we educate our kids to the best of our ability with the best tools that we can afford. Telling people that we only spend $15,000 or $16,000 per student is false. When we spend $57 million and divide it by 2,200 students, it's 25 grand a kid. So I would appreciate it if the school board would be honest and transparent with their numbers when it comes to presenting their budget to the municipality or the public, because I absolutely hate it when you mislead us.
Excuse
me.
Jeff, I just wanted to respond to that. There's a statute that requires us to use the education funding formula. If we did anything different, we would not be following the law. I've said that to you before. I've shared our tax rate calculation form, which walks you right through the calculation. If you have any questions, please feel free to call me and I will go over that with you.
I don't need any counseling. I can tell you that you deduct $6 million from your expense budget to calculate your taxes. That $6 million comes from someplace. It's not free. You don't pick it off a tree in the backyard. It's taxpayer money. It should count. And you people don't.
Excuse me. I'd like to
Joella?
make a comment. Yes, hi, I'm Joanna Reynolds. I joined around 6:30 by phone. I wasn't able to get on Google Meet, but I do think the narrative in the community is not around the pure pupil spending. It's around the cuts. Most of the people that have voted against the budget that was presented to us in March were concerned about over $1 million in cuts that were being made to the budget. And that's why we wanted the board to come back and regroup and take another look at it. And that's really all that I wanted to say. Thank you.
That wasn't Joel. Just a minute.
Oh, Joel, go ahead.
Who was that?
That was Joanne Reynolds.
Joanna. Oh, she didn't announce herself. Did she?
Yes, she
I
did.
think
She did.
Oh, she did? Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear her.
So is it my turn? I can't tell. Okay, I just want to say that when my children went through the school system and their friends, our school system was way up there in terms of comparing to other communities, but I want to compare us to ourselves. It's way lower per, if you want to use the per pupil figure, it's way lower now than it was when they went to school. And I have to say that there are 2 students from that group, one of my children being one of them, who actually sit now in the state legislature. Many went to college and good colleges. The Vermont State Scholar at that time was only 1 student for the whole state. That student came from Spalding High School. So comparing us to ourselves is what I'm interested in. And when I do that, I'm dismayed at the lower budget that we've had, and encourage you to even go for the 6 point, whatever it is, because our students deserve that. Even though my children graduated long ago, I'm concerned about the children who are going through the system right now. And having been a substitute teacher in the system for a long time, I've witnessed the effects that the lower budgets have had on our students. So I encourage you to, raise it up as high as you can. Thank you.
Alice?
Hello. My question also revolves around the marketing of this new budget and related to some of the questions that were raised during the course of the last budget and hearings and input. So what I did was I basically did a review of the literature and to see what the correlation is between student achievement and budgeting. And one of the questions that came up in that, or actually an answer that came up in it, was the fact that students have to have good tools. And included among those tools are the books. And that certainly was a very large portion of the question that came up during the last budget vote cycle. So have the books been the books that were spoken about, the books that have parents' names in them that their children are using today? Have they been replaced? Are there plans to replace them? There seems to be a significant amount of money in the book budget line. And is that intended just to go into surplus for next year? Or why aren't we getting the tools into the kids' hands that they need? It's one thing to have staff, but it's a whole nother kettle of fish to have the appropriate tools. And that concerns me not only as a citizen, but I'm sure it concerns a lot of the individuals to whom I speak about what their children are working with. So where are we on, for example, the math books? Did Dr. Carter get her calculus books? Are we there yet?
I would let the principals speak to that, but I know we are doing an assessment of our book lines and making sure we're getting what we need. So, that's the clearest answer I can give. I don't know, Luke, I don't know if you have anything to add to the math situation at high school.
Sure. We continue to work with the math teachers to identify and with all of our departments to identify what's needed. I know one of the things that they're looking at is scientific calculators, the graphing calculators, and those kinds of things. So every year we kind of have to identify what's the priority. Is it books? Is it calculators? Is it materials? Exactly what? So that's an ongoing conversation. Is that as things are identified, we prioritize and make the purchases that the department and the teachers feel are most needed with the resources that we have available.
Okay, thank you. Another question was, what is the purpose of a surplus? Many people who don't have children in the school, they don't know. So to define for them what the purpose of a surplus is there some rationale for it that can be explained as we go into this increased, a budget ask? For the total ask, are we just going to create another surplus? That's something that I'm hearing, that we're just asking for more money to create another surplus. What is the purpose of a surplus?
Alice, I think you were on the board when we went into detail about how the surpluses are broken down and how they have to be used, and there are different categories around those. We've really been trying to be as open about how that operates as we can be. That information has been shared repeatedly. Lisa, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that. And I will say before handing out to Lisa that we don't anticipate with as the ESSER days come to an end, having these surpluses we've had in the last 2 or 3 years, which have been highly, highly unusual.
Yeah, and I would just say, we don't set out to have a surplus. Again, over the COVID years, we certainly had a lot of grant funding, and that is what drove the surplus. We are slowly using that, spending it down, putting it toward tax stabilization, so our community doesn't have to, come up with all of the money. So every year we've put money toward some tax relief for our taxpayers. And that's a benefit, because when we talk about tax stabilization, the key word is stabilization. So it helps us not to have those highs and lows, and to keep things somewhat consistent. I think over the last, I'd say, several years, your tax rates have not, increased or decreased significantly. They stayed quite level.
And then my last concern from folks that I've been talking to is, are we as a school coordinating with the municipalities and the other, for example, watching what's going on at the state, the anticipated upping of fees and taxes, as well as the municipal budgets? Are you guys coordinating with them to see how that gross total is going to affect the communities? Because the big concern is, and it has been a big concern, is that there are individuals above the line, those that folks refer to as the electric car people. The electric car people, they really don't worry about their taxes. The individuals who are eligible for a significant amount of benefits, they're not that concerned. But there's a strata in that middle class that could be significantly damaged by tremendous increases in taxes and fees. And it could cause them great difficulty. And one of the groups that I work with is the groups that provide food pantry and things like that. And they're seeing a tremendous increase of that over the line folks who are now showing up at food pantries and really being concerned about insufficiency to feed their families. So are you guys talking with the city and the town and listening to what's going on in the legislature so that we're not swamping people's financial boats?
I don't know how to respond to all of that. I will say we are we're very in tune with what's going on at the legislature right now. There's lots of worry across the whole state about some of the issues you're talking about right now. The question, Alice, I think, is we have a job to do as school leaders and as a school board of directors here to put forth the best education we do with the funds we've got. I mean, a lot of these things are out of our control. And, you know, like I can say an example of what you're talking about. I'm working with a group here in Barrie who's working on building more affordable housing units, and I'm participating in helping them put that grant together right now. I mean, we're all doing our part as best we can. You know, I can't speak to the electric car people. I don't know who those folks are. I've not heard that term, but I mean, we're trying to be sensitive to everybody's needs here as best we can. There are folks who really want to take a very fiscally conservative approach to this. We fully understand that. We believe that this 5%, even the 6.5%, speak to those folks' concerns. But we also have folks in the community who really want to push our schools in the direction of being absolutely, you know, competing directly with the Washington Centrals and other districts. We're putting more resources in. It's something we're on a balancing act with this.
Then just keying off of that, what is the anticipated outcome if there is a significant increase in finances for the buildings, for the teachers, for the facilities, for the supplies and materials? What's the anticipated outcome that you guys see for student achievement? Are you anticipating a 3%, 5% increase in student achievement for all of this? I mean, that's the balance. Everybody in the community is paying for this. What are they getting in return? Are we going to see an increase in our student achievement from this? And I'll stop with that and let you answer. But those are the concerns that, as I'm talking to my neighbors, my acquaintances, the people I work with, those have always been their concerns. And now as you come back and ask for more than was originally asked for before the cut, there are some real significant concerns about whether or not we're going to see good things for kids or just be pouring money into a dark hole.
Michael, and then Terry, if you have your question still, then you're up after Michael.
So I'm gonna start making motions. So if Terry wants to say something.
I want to, I got
Well,
something.
we're gonna go back.
Yeah, we got to go around.
Well, I'm gonna make a motion for 4.97%. It's gonna pull out to a lack of a second. Then I'm gonna go for a 6.5. It might get a second, and then I'm gonna go for the 5%. So that's how it's gonna sugar out, folks.
Okay.
So I'll make the motion for 4.97%.
Terry had his hand up first. Oh, Michael.
Failed due to a lack of a second.
Right.
Thank you. You know, I know the one of the points that Alice brought up with those books, you know, and I feel like a teacher felt passionate enough about that to bring it to a board meeting and ask about it. So we really didn't answer that question. Are we purchasing those textbooks? Because that teacher, again, felt passionate enough about it that she came and advocated very strongly that she needed those books. So that question really didn't get answered. And I think it deserves an answer. Are we purchasing those books? That's one. Two, kind of a response to Lisa talked about tax stabilization money. Yes, we put tax stabilization money in every year, and that does offset tax increases. But if we'd stop over budgeting certain lines, that has essentially the same impact. So pay me now, pay me later, but not over budgeting essentially does the same thing. And the third one, sounds like Michael's is chomping at the bit to make a motion, but I would encourage us to spend a little more time Sounds like there's a lot of questions. I know, as Alice said, I've heard from folks in the community that don't know what's in these budgets. I think, maybe some more discussion, one more crack at being able to ask some questions and put some information out. It'd be nice if the 6.5 line by line would go out so the community could actually look at it before we make a decision on this thing. I think that's the right thing to do. We got a little bit of time. I don't think postponing a vote on one of these is going to hurt anything. I think having everyone make very sound and reasoned decisions on this is important. There's a lot of people that feel strongly in our community about it both ways, right? So, and I don't feel like we have all the information or everyone has all the information. So I think the right path forward is to push this off, not terribly long because we don't have much time, but a little bit of time. Thank you.
So I would go around one more time. Just entertaining.
So are you starting with me?
Yes.
I don't have any further questions. I would like to thank Lisa and the administrators for all their work on the budget. And I trust that they are making the best decisions for our students. So that's all I'll say.
I don't have any questions.
I do not have any questions.
I just wanted to respond, Michael, to your comment about the per pupil spending and comparing what other districts do and do not have. And what you said in that is comparing other districts who are spending more. Do they offer the same things we do? I assume not. So I don't think we should make a part of a narrative to our community of what is or isn't offered comparatively in our district to someone else's by saying, I assume not, because we don't know that unless we have gone and researched that to say, this district has these programs, we have these programs, and to look right at that. So I personally don't feel comfortable saying I assume not, and that's why we spend something and someone else spends something else and it looks a different way. I don't want to use assumptions to make a narrative about our district compared to another district. So that's all I want to say about that.
I appreciate the comment. My issue is just that we were using that number to fail a budget, and that's what upsets.
Well, that number is that number for a
Yeah.
reason. So
So gonna make a motion for the 6.5 now.
When we finish going around the table.
Yeah, it's actually-
You gotta go to Terry.
We appreciate
It's
you.
Michael's opportunity. I guess he can
I
ask
mean, the
questions or
thing is-
make a motion.
Well,
The thing, but
well,
I just
you're-
want to make the point that, I mean, I see what's gonna happen here, right?
But we don't know until it happens, Michael.
Okay, that's fine.
But I think Terry
I'll
was
just wait.
after Chris.
Actually, I hit Michael. Paul
That's-
mentioned
that's
it,
fine.
so I
Okay,
will,
sorry,
I will go
sorry,
in
Julie.
correct order.
It's fine. I mean, I think that's how it's gonna go down, and I just feel like, I feel like we're belaboring the point, and it's really unfortunate that it's the case, but, you know,
Well, I think everybody wants to be able to say.
Oh, no, I agree, and I think that we can just do the percentage and then we're gonna deal with these later on, like some of these issues that are, the specific positions. And I think that's gonna be, I'm not gonna let those go. That's a different conversation for me. So yeah, I mean, and we can have the discussion at the 6.5%. So I'll make the motion. It fails due to a lack of second, right?
When we finish going around, then maybe we can get somebody just to support you.
Okay. Well, that's fine. You do have to fail it due to a lack of second, though.
Yeah. Just-
Okay.
Terry, go ahead. Any further
No, I
questions?
already said everything, Giuliano. Thank you. I'm good.
I have just two quick questions. First one for Lisa. Lisa, if we get a much smaller amount of that $64 million, what impact will that have on these tax rates? And I'm referring back to the Brad James commentary as well. It will have an impact, am I correct?
Yes, depending on what the legislature comes out of with the yield, it will impact. Sometimes the yield is higher and that means our tax rate goes down. If the yield is lower, our tax rate will go up. That's how that works.
Yeah, and I'm kind of seeing it going in that direction because of what's occurring with Burlington right now. But anyways, the last thing I have, I'll be very brief. The ESSER positions the ESSER monies will start dropping off after September of 24. Am I correct?
Yes.
What impact will that have on our budget process moving ahead?
I am truly hoping that we can absorb the positions into the budget through attrition. That would be the hope.
That is what we're working hard on doing.
And that's all I had.
Nancy?
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment on the per pupil spending, and I don't know who mentioned it, but there was a lot of focus on the per pupil spending on our last budget. But you know, we're losing 60 students. If you take that number and multiply by 2, the 60 students going to CCB, or the on Lisa's report, we've dropped down 100 students. If you times that, that's quite a substantial amount of money that these kids that are leaving, that if you want to look at it that way. I personally don't focus on per pupil spending. I focus on the education that these kids are getting and what these teachers are bringing to this kids so they can learn and have a good education. I would like to see more focus on that. I would like to know, whatever budget we're going to, what is the plan to Alice's point, what is the plan to bring up the test scores? And I know everybody hates that word, but I think we need to be realistic, and I think we need to have those conversations. What is the plan to basically do that? And that just goes to my question, because you said you want to be competitive with other areas. So how do you mean that? What areas do you want to be competitive in? I mean, what is that? When you say that, I'm not.
In all areas.
Okay, give me a couple examples.
Let's go to Alice's point, student achievement, right? And I think you've been on the curriculum committee, right?
Yes,
I think
I have.
Karen's doing a very nice job articulating a CIA plan going forward that's tied to our strategic plan. All of that stuff, working with local assessments, not the statewide test scores have not been of much use for a number of years now. Looking at our local assessments and other ways to monitor how kids are doing. But in all areas, the athletics, arts, you know, many of these areas we're already doing great. You know, nobody is thrilled that our equalized pupils went down 100. What we're trying to do is make this community attractive to young families to move in and keep building our schools up. That has been my main focus, our main focus these last 2 years coming out of COVID, and also at the same time to attract the best possible professional and support staff to come to us. That's how we can compare to the Montpeliers and to the Washington Centrals, and yes, even to the Chittenden County districts. We have that in us with the people we've got. I have no doubt.
But with students dropping and the budget's going up, I mean, something to me, and that's why whatever budget's decided, will you have a plan for those competitiveness that you want to be with other areas? Will you have something outlined that we could say, okay, this is exactly what we're going to be doing, and this is the goal? And I know Karen is working on some of that. I understand that, but can we see something? Can we, I guess, you know, I know we do a lot of talking, and this would be great and that would be great, but I'm thinking we need to have something.
I'm thinking Karen's done a tremendous job sharing that information in the early.
No, I'm not saying she's not sharing the information. She certainly is, absolutely.
I would say the same thing for special education all across the board. The reality is, and this is not in any way unique to Barry, educating children is more expensive now than it has ever been. The needs of kids have increased. Needs of families have increased. The pressures on school districts, school systems to meet those needs has increased. And you have all the inflationary pressures. All that stuff is increasing. In no way is that unique to our district. Everybody's factoring that stuff in right now. The districts that are coming in with budgets approved at 9+%, they're still wondering and worried about some of these real fiscal pressures that are coming down the road that we're hearing about at the legislature, So we're all in the same boat. But the reality is educating children is more expensive now. It just is. So yeah, the numbers are going down. Costs can still be going up. That in no way is unique to us. unfortunately. I hope I answered your question.
Okay, I think, I hope everybody, the tax, I think Lisa touched on the taxes, or Paul did, the tax increases to each, community. And we've got outstanding stuff that may impact that as well. So, okay.
Before I move off, any other questions, virtually? Jeff?
I'd only say that earlier in the meeting, I heard school board member Wheeler indicate that she wasn't really prepared. So I guess I would hope that you might put off for one more week to give all the board members a chance to really refine their position on the budget.
I'm so sorry. I wasn't prepared to go line by line through the budget, but I am definitely prepared to vote.
All right, if there's no one else, I will move to 5.1, the BUSD budget approval.
Motion to approve the 5% budget, and I plan on voting no because I want the 4.97.
Is that your motion,
That is my motion.
including that I plan to vote?
No, I'm just giving
Okay.
my comment.
Commentary? Okay, I'll second the motion to approve the 5% budget.
There's a motion by Michael, a second by Sonia. Discussion?
I'll just reiterate what I said. I think we have not even put the 6.5% line by line budget out to the community. So the community hasn't seen it. I think it is irresponsible of us to vote on a budget that not everyone has had an opportunity to look at and absorb. So I think we can move forward. Certainly, it's everybody's wish, but I'm going to tell you that I think it's inappropriate to move forward at this point.
I think that if we move forward with a 5% budget, that is out there. And so, to be fair, the 5% budget, line by line budget, was included in last week's packet, and everyone has had an opportunity to see that. So I think everyone can understand what the 5% budget includes. And it was my understanding that the 6.5% budget included, the line by line included only the things that, a few of the things that were illustrated in this packet that would bring us up to that additional amount. So I don't think necessarily having a line by line is necessary. And I would also say that with our last budget cycle, we didn't have a line by line until a week before we voted. So I'll just throw that out there.
How did that happen 5 weeks delay?
Well, I think part of it was when the finance committee sort of sprung it on.
Call the question.
The question has been called. Oh, actually, Michael called the question.
What's the question?
The question was the 5.5. This is how it's going down, everybody.
5%?
Yeah, the
I'm
5%.
sorry. What does that mean to call the question? I'm so
That
sorry.
means it stopped any discussion and we move on to a vote. So all in favor of the 5%, you say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Terry, is that a thumbs down?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so it is 4-4. Thank you, everyone. I vote yay.
Thank you, everybody. We will get to work on this.
A motion for a warning.
Yes, move to 5.2, the BUSD warning approval.
So moved.
Second.
This motion by Michael, second by Paul. Any discussion?
I think we have to be very clear about what the motion is. I think we have to read it into the record what the warning is that we are going to approve. And the only reason I say that is because Andrea's not with us, and she will look back and say that we potentially get it wrong. So I'd rather make sure we do it, overdo it, and read the warning, or at least the amounts, into the record.
So the general fund budget expense total of $49,615,633, an increase of $2,361,314, or 5% higher than last year. Is that?
No, it's the warning.
Where's the one?
The warning is in the addendum. That's okay. So
The warning
I'm so
will be
used to
similar the
Carol
previous
doing all
one.
this.
Point of order. Point of order. Mr. Chair, could you please ask the members to be recognized first instead of going back and forth? It's really hard to understand here, and if everyone go one at a time and be recognized by the chair, it'd be much easier to hear things.
I think
We're in a discussion phase right now after, but we have to get the clarity. I'm just waiting to be recognized by the chair.
Yeah, so to clarify, thank you for pointing that out, because it's a different number. Shall the voters of Barry Unified School District approve the school board to expend $55,615,633, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year? It is estimated. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in an education spending of $17,978 per equalized pupil. This reflects a 5% general fund increase.
Second.
Okay, so there's a motion.
I was just clarifying the motion.
Just making
sure.
I had already seconded him the first time around, but that's great.
No, wait, I think I seconded him the first time around.
Yeah, so first time she got, the second time, there was the 5% budget, and then this is the warning.
Madam, Mr. Chair, can you make a ruling on that? Because I believe I did second Mr. Booton's motion. You just didn't clarify.
Oh,
It was the first.
the first one.
5%.
My apologies.
And, so there's a motion, Paul?
And I second. I'm just reaffirming what's just been.
Discussion? Dave?
Yeah, hating to do this, but the way he read it, I mean, it's technically accurate, but it's not the way that article is usually written. The increase is the increase in the per pupil spending, which the packet says is 10.6% or something like that. You know, I mean, you're showing the budget increase, but not the increase in per pupil spending, and that's what that percentage typically is.
Right, David, that's in response to H42 that gave districts was looking at ways to more accurately look at the spending. The concern that was brought to the governor's attention and what he voted on was that language was actually very confusing to voters. So we're trying to be as clear as we can be in putting it out that way, as some other districts have done as well.
Yeah, other districts have left it off completely, or that part of it, and as opposed to inserting a number that is, way different than the number people have seen. They just took both numbers out, but as long as I'm understanding what you're doing, I'm good.
Yeah, that was intentional, and it's what other districts are doing right now. Others had actually done it before H42. There was a lot of confusion around that ballot language. It was creating a lot of problems.
So you're increasing a budget that's going to show a decrease in the what? Because you're saying it's just going to be a straight 5%.
It's a 5% general fund increase, which is accurate.
Okay. So the per pupil part is being left out in that warning?
Per pupil, the per pupil language that used to have to be in there for statute that no longer has to be is going to be.
That's what I'm asking, because in the last vote we had it in there.
Right, because we got that information. We got that
that's
information before the ballot was, or after the ballot was created.
see what you're saying.
Terry?
Yeah. Yes,
That's it.
I would, so Paul just alluded to it, but the last ballot that we just did a few weeks ago had that language in it. And I think for consistency, there were already people confused about this. If we come forth with different ballot language, we're going to continue to confuse people. I think we need to be consistent for this cycle and include that language.
So is that a friendly amendment?
Yeah.
Yes, make a motion to amend it.
Well, you can't, you can't do that. He's asking for a friendly amendment. I'm saying that's fine, because clarity is important.
Yes.
And that is the goal of this.
Yeah, no, but as we're talking about the previous budget, and so that number is reflected in the
10.6 would be the per pupil spending number.
Yep.
And then after this cycle's done, then you can go to whatever that new number is.
So
Can I ask a clarifying question? Can you read the warning again? We're right now discussing the ballot language. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
We're discussing the ballot language and what's in here, which I'm assuming this reflects a 5% general fund increase is not chart or a statute language. That's something we're doing additional for clarity. Is that correct?
Basically, all that has to be in the ballot is that first sentence.
Right. So that's
That's
correct. So we're adding that in there for clarity. We're putting the number in that matches closely to, or matches the formula that we used on the previous budget. That's pretty much, that's all there is
I'm
to
so
it.
sorry. Mr. Malone is saying a friendly amendment to add that language back
Correct.
in
So what that does is that means that I just said that's fine.
the 10%.
Right. And
It's at apples to what we had
Right.
in the last defeated budget.
Okay, so if we vote on this motion now, we'll vote to have that 10%.
it'll say 10%.
So 10.6.
Or 10.6, sorry.
well, my question is, are you replacing the sentence that says this reflects a 5% general fund increase with the language that has the per pupil percentage increce?
Good point. So
Because I think we need to be very
Correct.
clear what that language is.
Correct.
We can't just say friendly
That's-
amendment and
that is correct. Yeah, so let me modify this. This is, don't
Did you have anything?
Juliana. Juliana Cresta.
Yeah.
Dave Delcor had his hand up.
He doesn't
I don't think I should case him.
All right. So let me see that so that I can copy it. Does anybody have the ballot language for last time on hand?
I can go find it if you'd like me to.
Somebody, oh, well, look at that. All right. So what does it say there, son?
it says, shall the voters of the Barry Unified Union School District approve the school board to expend $53,963,133, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in education spending of $17,228 per equalized pupil. This projected spending per equalized pupil is 6% higher than spending for the current year.
This projected, I'm slow, so
Spending per equalized pupil
spending per pupil
is
is
blank percent higher than spending for the current year.
10.6%. 6%, repeat,
Higher
higher
than spending
than
for the
then,
current year. Than,
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 okay.
than spending for the current year.
Okay, so let me read it back so that I get it right. Shall the voters of the Barry Unified School District approve the school board to expend $55,615,633, which is the amount the school board has determined to be necessary for the ensuing fiscal year. It is estimated that this proposed budget, if approved, will result in an education spending of $17,978 per equalized pupil. The projected spending per equalized pupil is 10.6% higher than spending for the current year.
Correct.
Okay, so thank you for that. And that was fun. And I will email that to, who wants that?
Oh, I think you maybe would wait till it gets.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a very good point. So I'll call the question.
The question is called. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Why?
No, the addition of
I-
that 10%, I think that it's not required by statute anymore, and we should leave it out. It's very confusing on the ballot.
I think you're adding more confusion by changing language midstream on an existing budget that has been defeated once, but is up for another vote. If you change that language.
I will say our communication plan is to be very thorough in explaining the ballot language and how all this.
Point of order. Mr. Chair,
Great, thank you. So I will need, the hand count of, I don't know who voted and who did not, so I need.
I didn't vote. I was like just trying to understand what I was voting for and weighing my options.
I was too. I wasn't sure what was going on. Are you calling the motion?
Terry called but he
Terry?
Terry,
I'll help you. I called point of order because you voted, people voted, and you're having discussion after the fact, which you're not supposed to do.
not everyone voted, so what I need is, a count. Those four be warning as, so it's 2, 3 opposed. Oh, Terry. Opposed? Okay. Well, I do agree that, we don't have to have it. I also understand that, having it is consistent. But I feel the way it is written out now is fine, so I vote no.
That was confusing.
So I'll make a motion that we approve the language as presented in our packet, which is what I think you're agreeing to, which says this reflects a 5% general fund increase.
Second.
Instead of the language about the percentage increase of per pupil spending.
There's a motion by Sonia, second, by Chris. Any discussion?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this, I recently made a motion on something like this where we added clarity into it, and this right here feels like deception. So I'll be voting no. Which on a warning is surprising. Because usually those are perfunctory.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
It's.
So I'll just call the question.
And that means we vote.
Yeah, that does.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I vote in the affirmative.
Of course.
So. Motion to adjourn?
No.
Executive
We just have an executive session.
So-
Can I make, are we doing round table or it's,
No.
round
No.
table? Right. Can I make a comment about the budget?
No,
No.
we're past that.
We'll pass that?
Can I ask for a break?
After we go into executive
Okay.
session. Before, sorry, correct. So I need a motion to go into executive session for personnel.
I'll make that motion for the personnel issue.
Second.
Who are we inviting in?
And we'll bring the
I
super,
just, Chris,
and incorporating that motion to incorporate the superintendent in coming into that executive session.
and, so there's a motion by Paul, second by Michael. All in-
Dave Delcourt.
Oh, Dave?
Yeah, could you be a little bit more clear in terms of personnel is, I mean, there's a broad range of personnel related things you can go in for and, you know, disciplinary action, evaluation, appointment, employment, you know. Just
Yep.
pick-
It's, details about a resignation. There's no action that needs to be taken.
Okay. And you, no action at all? Cool. Thanks.
Oh, yep, I can do that. Or yeah, I can set up an executive session for you.
Okay, that's what I was asking for. Thanks.
I will send you an invite momentarily.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're in executive session.
Thank you all. Have a good night. We're taking a break.
Yes.
How long do you think this is gonna be?
On my end, not long at all.